Hey guys, tonight we are going to travel back to the 19th century, to a world of steam trains, gaslight, and great bustling cities. We are going to Victorian London, but we are not here to talk about the Queen or the Empire. We are here to talk about a much more quiet, personal, and timeless problem: the simple, maddening inability to get a good night's sleep. Frankly, some of the Victorian solutions for insomnia were so strange and uncomfortable, you'd think they were designed to make you grateful for the simple misery of just being tired. We'll be exploring everything from wet sheets to bizarre machines. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. It's always a huge encouragement. For those of you already settled in, I'd love to see where and when you're listening from. Go ahead and drop your city and local time in the comments. I'm recording this on a quiet Monday afternoon, just after 2 p.m., here in Cheney, Kansas, which feels like a perfect time for a little historical nap. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The gentle whir of the fan fades, replaced by a different set of sounds. From the street outside your window, you hear the distant rhythmic clop 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 of a horse's hooves on cobblestone, the rattle of a passing carriage's iron-rimmed wheels, and the faint, lonely cry of a night watchman calling out that all is well. But for you, all is not well. It is 3 o'clock in the morning, and you are wide awake. Imagine you are here in your bedroom in Victorian London around the year 1880. You are lying in a large, four-poster bed, surrounded by heavy velvet curtains. The room is dark, but not completely. A pale, yellowish light from the gas lamp in the street outside filters through a gap in the curtains, painting a soft, hazy line on the ceiling. And with that light comes a faint but constant sound, the gentle hiss of the burning gas. This is the sound of the modern age, and it is one of the reasons you cannot sleep. The widespread adoption of gas lighting in Victorian cities was a revolution. For the first time in human history, cities were brightly lit all through the night. This extended the workday, it encouraged a vibrant nightlife of theaters and restaurants, and it completely disrupted the ancient, natural rhythms of sleep that had governed human life for millennia. Your mind is racing. You've tried counting sheep. You've counted so many imaginary sheep that you've run out of imaginary pastureland for them to graze in. You've moved on to counting imaginary badgers, which are much harder to visualize and are not having the desired soporific effect. The city outside is never truly silent. Even at this late hour, you can hear the distant, mournful whistle of a steam train arriving at one of the great London rail terminals. The Industrial Revolution, which has brought so much wealth and progress to your nation, has also brought a new and relentless kind of noise. Social historians debate the true extent of insomnia as a medical condition in the Victorian era. Was there a genuine epidemic of sleeplessness, a real consequence of the new stresses and environmental factors of industrial urban life? Or was it, in part, a fashionable malady, a condition that the growing and increasingly anxious middle class, with more leisure time to worry about their health, simply became obsessed with? The explosion of newspaper articles, advertisements for cures, and self-help books on the topic certainly suggests it was a major preoccupation of the age. You toss and you turn. You are thinking about a deadline at your work, about a slightly awkward conversation you had at dinner yesterday, about the state of the empire, about whether you remember to lock the back door. It is the classic, timeless experience of your brain deciding to host a grand festival of minor anxieties at 3 o'clock in the morning. The gaslight hisses. The city rumbles. Sleep feels like a distant, unattainable country that you have been exiled from. You are tired of being tired. You cannot go on like this. You decide that tomorrow you will begin a quest for a cure. You will start with the most respectable and sensible of all options: a visit to your trusted family doctor. Surely, in this great age of science and progress, he will have a solution that as the first gray smoky light of dawn begins to filter through the curtains, you finally drift into a shallow, fitful, and unsatisfying sleep. Your journey in search of rest is about to begin. Your restless night is not a unique affliction. You are part of a great, silent, and very tired epidemic of sleeplessness. To understand the strange and sometimes soothing cures you are about to seek, we must first understand why the Victorian mind was so uniquely burdened, so prone to anxiety, so very tired. The Victorian era was, above all, an age of dizzying, unprecedented, and often terrifying change. A person born in the early part of the 19th century would have grown up in a world that was still largely quiet, agricultural, and lit by candles, a world that would have been recognizable to a Roman. By the time they were old, they would be living in a world of steam trains, telegraphs, and cities illuminated by the constant, hissing glare of gaslight. The world was being completely remade in the space of a single lifetime. This was the age of the clock. In the new factories and offices, life was no longer governed by the sun and the seasons, but by the rigid, unforgiving tyranny of the clock, the punch card, and the train schedule. The pace of life, for the first time in history, was accelerating at a relentless rate. It was an age of constant newness. A new invention, a new scientific discovery, a new political crisis was reported in the newspapers every single week. It must have felt like living in a permanent, low-grade state of future shock. For a person of your middle-class standing, this new modern world brought with it a new and terrible set of social pressures. Victorian society was governed by an incredibly complex and unforgiving code of etiquette. There was a right way and a wrong way to do everything: how to hold your teacup, which fork to use for the fish course, how to address a person of a slightly higher social rank. A single clumsy misstep could lead to social disgrace. A huge part of your social life was the ritual of calling, where you would leave your engraved calling card at the homes of your acquaintances. The rules were a labyrinth. There were specific times of day you could call. You had to know whether to leave one card or two. The folding of a corner on a card you received had a specific, secret meaning. The rulebook for Victorian social life was 1,000 pages long, and no one ever gave you a copy. You just had to know. The constant, low-level fear of accidentally using the wrong spoon was enough to keep anyone awake at night. This was also an age of profound spiritual and intellectual anxiety. The great, solid certainties that had anchored the world for centuries were beginning to crumble. Charles Darwin's new theory of evolution had challenged the very foundations of religious faith. Geologists had proven that the Earth was millions of years old, not the 6,000 suggested by the Bible. The old stories were no longer enough to explain the world. Historians debate the impact of the new print culture on this public anxiety. With the explosion of cheap, mass-produced newspapers and magazines, a person in London was now instantly connected to the news of the entire world. Was the average person suddenly exposed to a much wider and more terrifying world of crime, war, and political disaster than ever before? The telegraph had created the 19th century version of the 24/7 news cycle, and with it came a new kind of ambient information-based stress. All of these pressures, the speed of modern life, the rigid social codes, the crumbling of old faiths, contributed to a host of ailments that the Victorians often lumped together under fashionable, if vague, terms like neurasthenia, nervous prostration, or simply nervousness. Being nervous was almost a status symbol. It showed you were sensitive, refined, and struggling with the immense pressures of modern civilization. It was a much more elegant way of saying, "I am incredibly stressed out and haven't slept in a week." And the primary, most common, and most maddening symptom of this modern nervous condition was insomnia. Your sleeplessness, you see, is not just a personal failing. It is a symptom of your entire brilliant and deeply anxious civilization. And so, with a mind filled with these very modern worries, you put on your hat and coat, and you make your way through the bustling, noisy streets of London to the one person you hope can provide a calm, sensible, and scientific solution to your problem: your family doctor. You arrive at your family doctor's surgery, a respectable-looking townhouse on a quiet, tree-lined London street. The heavy front door is opened by a maid, and you are shown into a hushed and dimly lit waiting room. The air inside smells of polished wood, old leather-bound books, and the faint, sharp, and reassuringly clean scent of carbolic acid. After a short wait, you are shown into the doctor's consultation room. Your doctor is a man in his 50s, with kind, intelligent eyes, a magnificent gray beard, and a deeply calming paternalistic demeanor. He is the very picture of a respectable Victorian physician. He greets you warmly, gestures for you to sit, and asks you in a soft voice what seems to be the trouble. You explain your symptoms: the long sleepless nights, the difficulty in quieting your mind, the constant, low-level feeling of worry and exhaustion. You tell him you feel unstrung, that your nerves are in a state of constant agitation. He listens patiently, nodding his head with a look of profound understanding. He does not perform a physical examination. He does not take your pulse or listen to your breathing. He is far more interested in your lifestyle, your daily habits, and what he perceives as your moral and emotional constitution. After listening for a time, he gives you his diagnosis. You are suffering, he explains, from nervous prostration, or neurasthenia. Neurasthenia was a very common and fashionable diagnosis in the late 19th century, particularly among the educated and middle classes. It was believed to be a genuine physical disorder of the nervous system, a depletion of the body's vital nerve force, caused by the unprecedented stresses of modern, civilized life. Its symptoms were fatigue, anxiety, headaches, a feeling of melancholy, and most famously chronic insomnia. It is a diagnosis that is both alarming and, in a strange way, quite flattering. You are not just tired. You are suffering from a sophisticated, modern ailment, a sign that you possess a refined and sensitive nature that is being worn down by the crude, fast pace of the industrial world. It is a much more elegant diagnosis than simply, "You are very stressed out." The doctor explains the likely causes of your condition. You are probably spending too much time indoors, breathing the unhealthy air of the city. You are likely engaging in too much mental excitement in the evenings, perhaps reading the latest sensational serialized novel in the newspaper, or attending stimulating social gatherings. This diagnosis was often a deeply gendered one. If you were a man, your neurasthenia was likely caused by the noble pressures of business and the intellectual demands of your profession. If you were a woman, however, your condition was often attributed to a more delicate female hysteria. The cause might be overeducation, which was believed to place a dangerous strain on the supposedly weaker female nervous system, or a simple failure to adhere to your proper, calming domestic duties. The cures were often different, too. A man might be prescribed a vigorous trip to the mountains. A woman might be prescribed 6 months of absolute bed rest in a darkened room. Historians of medicine still debate the true nature of neurasthenia. Was it a real, distinct medical condition, perhaps a precursor to our modern understanding of chronic fatigue syndrome or clinical depression? Or was it a culture-bound syndrome, a convenient label for Victorian society to medicalize and explain the widespread anxieties and social stresses of its own rapidly changing era? Your doctor, a good and cautious man, does not immediately reach for the prescription pad to order a strong medicine. He believes that the first and most effective treatment for a case of overwrought nerves is a radical change in your daily habits. He is a firm believer in the power of routine, common sense, and a life of profound and almost aggressive dullness. He dips his pen in his inkwell, and on a piece of thick, creamy paper, he begins to write out your prescription. It is not for a potion to be bought at the chemist's shop. It is a list of rules for living, a detailed and comprehensive plan designed to calm your modern, overstimulated mind and to restore your body to its natural, peaceful rhythm of sleep. The doctor finishes writing, sands the ink dry with a pinch of fine blue powder, and hands you the sheet of paper with a reassuringly confident smile. "Here we are," he says. "Your path back to restful sleep. Follow these instructions precisely, and your overwrought nervous system will soon be restored to its natural, placid state." You thank him, and after paying the consultation fee, you step back out into the noisy London street with your prescription in hand. You look down at the list. It is a detailed and comprehensive regime for the complete and total eradication of anything interesting from your life. First, there is the matter of diet. Your supper, the doctor has instructed, must be light, and it must be taken at least 3 hours before you intend to go to bed. He has forbidden all heavy meats, rich sauces, pastries, and alcohol. His recommended evening meal is a small bowl of thin gruel, or perhaps a single slice of dry toast with a little butter. No tea or coffee is to be taken after midday, as these are known and powerful stimulants of the nervous system. Second, there is the matter of your evening's mental activity. All forms of excitement are to be strictly avoided. You must not read the latest, sensational novels by authors like Wilkie Collins. You must not engage in vigorous political debate with your family. You must not, under any circumstances, attend the theater or a stimulating musical concert. Your mind in the evening is to be a calm, untroubled pond. He has, however, prescribed reading, but it must be the right kind of reading. He has written a short list of recommended authors. The list includes works of dense moral philosophy, volumes of particularly dry sermons, and long, worthy, but incredibly detailed history books. The goal of this reading is not to entertain or to enlighten. The goal is to be so profoundly and aggressively boring that it acts as a kind of literary sedative. So, the prescription is this. You are to eat a dinner of wet bread, drink only lukewarm water, and then for entertainment you are to read a 400-page book on the history of agricultural drainage techniques. It is a foolproof plan. You will either fall asleep from the sheer, overwhelming boredom, or you will simply lose the will to remain conscious at all. This kind of sleep hygiene advice was extremely common in the Victorian era, and much of it in a gentler form is still considered valid today. Medical writers of the period placed enormous emphasis on routine, diet, and the avoidance of mental excitement as the primary non-medicinal cure for insomnia. The doctor has also given you instructions for your bedroom environment itself. The room must be cool but not cold, and it must be well ventilated. But this came with a complicated caveat. While fresh air was considered healthy, the night air, especially in a city like London, was widely feared. It was believed that the damp, cold night mists, the malaria or bad air, were filled with a poisonous miasma that could cause fevers and disease. So the advice was to open a window for ventilation, but to then hang a heavy curtain in front of it to filter out the dangerous night vapors. It was a difficult balance to strike. That night you begin your new regime. You eat a sad, lonely bowl of gruel for your supper. You politely decline a spirited debate with your father about the Prime Minister, and you settle into your armchair with a book titled A Treatise on the Geometrical Properties of Conic Sections. It is, as promised, fantastically dull. After 3 pages of dense, impenetrable mathematics, your mind does not feel calmer, just feels sadder. You start to miss your old, exciting, anxiety-filled thoughts. You try the regime for a full week. You are well behaved. You are bland. You are profoundly and impressively dull. And yet, when you lie in your bed at night, your mind still races. The sensible, rational, common-sense cure is not enough to quiet your modern, anxious brain. You realize you must try something more. Your quiet inquiries into other potential cures lead you to the gentle, fragrant, and ancient world of herbal remedies. The cure of absolute dullness has failed. You have eaten the blandest of foods and read the most boring of books, and yet you are still lying wide awake, your mind buzzing with the anxieties of the day. You remember another part of your doctor's advice, something that seemed simple at the time but which you now realize is deeply and strangely complicated. It is the matter of ventilation and the peculiar, conflicting Victorian attitudes towards the night air. On the one hand, every modern physician and sanitary reformer is in agreement. A constant supply of fresh air is essential for good health. You are told to fear the stale, used air of a sealed-up room. This is a central part of the miasma theory. The belief is that the air inside a house, filled with the exhalations of human breath and the fumes from gas lamps and cooking, becomes stagnant and poisonous. This indoor miasma must be cleared out to prevent sickness. On the other hand, there is a deep, ancient, and powerful fear of the night air itself. For centuries, it has been an article of faith that the cold, damp, misty air of the night is intrinsically unhealthy. It is believed that the mists that rise from the ground after dark, especially in a city built on a marshy river basin like London, are filled with dangerous vapors, or malaria, literally, bad air, that can cause fevers, chills, and all manner of disease. So the expert medical advice is to get plenty of fresh air, while also being absolutely terrified of the air that exists at night. You are supposed to open your window to let the bad air out, but not so much that the other, different bad air from the outside gets in. It is a very confusing and stressful approach to the simple act of breathing. You look around your own bedroom. It is a fortress designed to keep the night air out. You have heavy velvet curtains lining the windows. You might even have a thick canopy draped around your four-poster bed, creating another, smaller, and even more airless room within the room. This was considered the very picture of a healthy, comfortable, and well-appointed bedroom, but your doctor has insisted on ventilation. So, you get out of bed and you cautiously open your window just a crack. The sounds of the sleeping city drift in. The distant clatter of a carriage, the cry of a lone cat. And with the sounds comes the smell of the night. The cool, damp scent of the city's parks, mixed with the ever-present, faint smell of coal smoke to combat the perceived dangers of this invading night air. Some people would hang cloths soaked in a disinfectant, like carbolic acid or vinegar, in front of their open windows, hoping to filter the miasma before it entered the room. Others would buy patented window ventilators, complex little devices of wood and metal designed to allow air to circulate without creating a direct, and presumably lethal, draft. You have no such device. You have only your window, now open by about an inch. You return to your bed. You lie in the darkness, listening, half expecting a tiny, malevolent, disease-carrying fog to creep in and give you a nasty cold. Historians of science debate exactly when this deep-seated fear of the night air finally began to recede. Was it the widespread acceptance of the germ theory in the 1870s and 80s, which proved that diseases were caused by specific microscopic organisms and not by some vague, damp vapor? Or was it the great public health projects themselves, the draining of swamps, the building of sewer systems like the one Bazalgette is dreaming of, that, by reducing diseases like cholera and malaria, made the night air itself genuinely safer to breathe? The good news is, after an hour of this experiment, you have not been immediately struck down by a raging fever. The cool, fresh air is actually quite pleasant. The bad news is, you are still completely and totally awake. The new sounds from the street, while faint, are just another distraction for your racing mind. You have just replaced the problem of being stuffy and sleepless with being pleasantly cool and sleepless. It is a definite improvement, but it is not the cure you were hoping for. You have now tried the doctor's most sensible advice on diet, entertainment, and the environment, all to no avail. You realize that your modern nervous condition requires something more. It is time to turn to the older, gentler, and more fragrant remedies. It is time to explore the world of herbs. Your doctor's modern, sensible advice has proven insufficient for your modern, anxious mind. And so, you turn to an older, gentler, and much more fragrant form of medicine. You decide to explore the world of herbal sleep aids, a tradition of knowledge that has been passed down for centuries, long before the age of doctors with fancy consulting rooms. Your first experiment is with hops. You go to a local herbalist and purchase a bag of dried hop flowers, the very same cone-like, papery blossoms that are used to give beer its distinctive, bitter flavor. But you are not going to be brewing beer. You are going to be making a pillow. The hop pillow was one of the most famous and widely prescribed folk remedies for sleeplessness. The method was simple. You take a small linen or muslin bag and stuff it full of the dried hop flowers. You then place this sachet inside your main pillowcase, near your head. The theory was that the warmth of your body would, over the course of the night, gently release the volatile, sleep-inducing oils from the hops, and you would breathe them in as you slept. It is a wonderful multi-purpose plant. By day, it is the key ingredient in the nation's favorite beverage. By night, it is a gentle, calming sleep aid. It is a plant that helps you to both enjoy your evening and to recover from it. A true friend to humanity. Hops are a well-known and scientifically recognized mild sedative. Their sleep-inducing properties were so famous, in fact, that King George III himself was famously prescribed a hop pillow to help him sleep and to calm his agitated mind during his bouts of madness. That night, you place your new pillow in your bed. The scent is strong, a strange but not unpleasant mixture of earthy, bitter, and vaguely floral notes. It is the smell of a sleepy summer field. To this, you add the second great weapon in the herbal sleep arsenal, lavender. You sprinkle your bed linens with lavender water, and you place a small sachet of dried lavender flowers on your bedside table. The clean, sweet, and profoundly calming scent of the lavender mixes with the bitter aroma of the hops. This act for a Victorian was not just a medical one. It was also a symbolic one. In the complex language of flowers that was so popular in your era, every flower had a specific meaning. Lavender, for instance, signified serenity, purity, and devotion. By surrounding yourself with its scent, you were not just trying a remedy. You were actively inviting the spirit of tranquility into your bedroom. You had to be careful with this language, of course. You wouldn't want to accidentally stuff your pillow with a flower that meant eternal vigilance or passionate revenge. It would probably send the wrong message to your subconscious and result in some very strange dreams. Botanists and medical historians still debate the true effectiveness of many of these traditional herbal remedies. How much of their perceived effect was due to the actual sedative chemical properties of the plants themselves, and how much was due to the powerful placebo effect of the ritual. The simple, mindful act of preparing a special pillow, of brewing a calming cup of chamomile tea, of sprinkling your sheets with a fragrant water. These rituals in themselves are a powerful psychological tool for preparing the mind and body for sleep. You lie back in your bed. The room now smells like a beautiful, if slightly strange, combination of a brewery and a lovely grandmother's linen closet. You take a deep breath. You feel very calm. You feel very serene. You are still, however, completely awake. But you are now awake in a much more nicely scented and profoundly relaxing environment. The herbs have calmed your body, but they have not quieted your racing mind. You realize that to solve this problem, you must go to the source. You must find a way to calm the anxious, whirring machine of your own thoughts. And your reading has told you of another set of cures, not of the body, but of the mind itself. Your bedroom now smells like a peaceful, sleepy meadow. Your body, soothed by the gentle, fragrant aromas of hops and lavender, is calm and relaxed. But your mind, your modern, anxious Victorian mind, is still resolutely, stubbornly awake. And so, you decide it is time to fight fire with fire. You will try to conquer your racing, interesting thoughts by deliberately replacing them with other, more boring thoughts. You begin with the most famous and ancient of all mental sleep aids. You will count sheep. You close your eyes. You take a slow, deep breath. And you begin to construct the scene in your mind. You picture a lush, green English meadow on a sunny afternoon. In the middle of the meadow is a low, rustic stone wall. And on the left side of the wall is a field filled with an almost infinite supply of fluffy, white, and frankly, rather generic-looking sheep. Then the counting begins. You picture the first sheep. It trots up to the wall, gathers itself with a small, sheep-like motion, and leaps gracefully over. Another sheep follows. It too takes a little run up and jumps over the wall. Another. And another. 3, 4. The theory behind this age-old practice is a simple one. The mental image is designed to be as repetitive, as rhythmic, and as profoundly dull as possible. The hope is that this gentle, monotonous internal movie will occupy your mind just enough to prevent it from wandering off into its usual, more stressful territory of unpaid bills, awkward social encounters, and the general state of the empire. But the practice, you discover, is a little more complicated. After the first 50 sheep, you start to get invested. You notice that some of the sheep are much better jumpers than others. Sheep number 67 does a particularly stylish little kick with its hind legs as it clears the wall. Sheep number 83 seems a bit hesitant. You start to worry about him. You begin giving them names. Your boring, repetitive mental exercise has accidentally become an imaginary sheep athletics competition, which is not at all restful, so you try a different mental task. Victorian self-help books are full of them. You try counting backwards very slowly from 1000. You try reciting a particularly long and tedious epic poem from memory. You try to visualize a completely blank, white wall, and to hold that image in your mind without any other thoughts intruding. But your anxious mind immediately begins to try and decorate the wall. A nice painting would look good just there, it says. Perhaps a chair rail? A slightly different shade of off-white might be better. Your attempt at mental minimalism has turned into an imaginary home renovation project. Psychologists today still debate the effectiveness of these techniques. Some modern studies suggest that for many insomniacs, the act of counting is actually too complex and cognitively engaging for a brain that needs to shut down. These studies suggest that a more effective technique is to visualize a calm, static, and relaxing scene, like a quiet beach or a peaceful forest, which requires less mental effort. You are discovering the great, frustrating paradox of insomnia. Sleep is a state that you cannot achieve through sheer force of will. It is a thing you must surrender to, and it is very, very difficult to surrender on command. The very act of trying so hard to fall asleep is the very thing that is now keeping you awake. You give it one last try. You attempt a popular Victorian visualization technique. You are to imagine yourself as a single, peaceful drop of water falling into a large, perfectly still pool. You picture the drop. You picture the pool. But your mind once again insists on adding details. Am I a drop of rain? It asks. Or a drop from a leaky tap? Am I clean water, or am I, heaven forbid, water from the Thames? Your simple meditative drop of water has now acquired a complex backstory and a series of deep, existential anxieties. This is not working. You open your eyes. The room is still dark. The herbs still smell lovely, and you are still awake. You have tried the doctor's sensible advice. You have tried the gentle, traditional herbal remedies. And you have tried and failed to bore your own brain into submission. Your desperation is growing. It is time to consider more extreme, more fashionable, and much, much more uncomfortable measures. The gentle, fragrant cures have failed you. Your sleeplessness persists, a stubborn, unwelcome guest in the house of your mind. In your desperation, your thoughts turn to a more radical and highly fashionable solution, one that is being praised in all the London magazines and newspapers as the very latest in modern scientific healing. You decide to make a journey. You are going to try the water cure. You pack a small bag and you take a steam train out of the smoky, bustling city and into the green, rolling hills of the English countryside. Your destination is a hydropathic establishment, one of the many grand health spas that have sprung up across the country to cater to the nervous and the wealthy from the outside. The establishment looks like a magnificent country hotel or a stately home. It is a large, imposing building of stone, set in acres of beautifully manicured lawns and gardens. The air here is clean, fresh, and smells of cut grass and pine trees. A sense of peace and order radiates from the very landscape. You feel a flicker of hope. Surely, in such a beautiful and tranquil place, you will be able to find rest. Hydropathy, or the water cure, was an extremely popular alternative medicine movement in the 19th century. Famous figures, from the poet Alfred Tennyson to the great scientist Charles Darwin himself, were devotees of the cure. The philosophy behind it was one of heroic, forceful intervention. The idea was that the vigorous and repeated application of cold water, in a variety of different forms, would deliver a healthy shock to the system. This shock was believed to stimulate the circulation, tone the nervous system, and flush out the morbid impurities that were the root cause of all disease. The basic idea seems to be that if you make yourself miserable enough with cold water for a few weeks, Your body will be so busy trying to avoid freezing that it will completely forget to be sick. It is a very bracing and very Victorian approach to wellness. You have your initial consultation with the head doctor of the establishment. He is not like your gentle, cautious family physician. He is an enthusiast. He speaks with a passionate, almost fanatical zeal about the miraculous, life-giving, and curative properties of pure, cold water. He assures you that your nervous prostration and your sleeplessness can be completely cured by his methods. The life at a hydro, as they were called, was one of strict and rigorous routine. You must rise before dawn. You must take a long, brisk walk before breakfast. The diet is simple, plain, and bland. No alcohol, no spices, no rich foods. The days are filled with prescribed exercises and, of course, a series of water-based treatments. It was a complete lifestyle overhaul. You suspect that the strict diet, the fresh air, and the regular sleep schedule are probably doing most of the therapeutic work, but the cold water is what makes it all feel more dramatic and scientific. Medical historians debate the reasons for hydropathy's immense popularity. Was it a genuinely effective therapy for some conditions? Or was it primarily a reaction against the often dangerous and unpleasant practices of mainstream medicine at the time, which still involved things like bloodletting and the prescription of heavy, toxic doses of mercury and arsenic? For many, the clean, nature-focused, and drug-free environment of the hydro was simply a safer and healthier alternative. It was the 19th century version of a wellness retreat. You look at the other patients in the grand dining hall. They are all members of the respectable middle and upper classes, all suffering from various fashionable nervous complaints. You are all here together. A support group for the chronically stressed out. You can compare notes on the invigorating chilliness of the morning walk and the profound blandness of the evening porridge. It is a bonding experience, united by a shared sense of hope and a deep, pervasive discomfort. That evening, the head doctor gives you your personalized prescription of treatments. Your cure is about to begin. He tells you that tomorrow morning before breakfast, you are to report to the treatment rooms. You will begin with the most famous, most celebrated, and most feared of all the hydropathic treatments. You will experience the wet sheet pack. You arrive at the treatment rooms in the cold, pre-dawn gloom of the next morning. The air in these tiled chambers is damp and chilly, and it smells powerfully of wet linen and carbolic soap. An attendant, a large and unervingly cheerful woman with forearms like a blacksmith, greets you. It is time, she announces, for your wet sheet pack. The process is a simple, systematic, and profoundly uncomfortable one. First, you are instructed to undress completely. Then, you lie down on a narrow bed covered with a waterproof sheet. The attendant brings a large, coarse, heavy linen sheet that has been soaked in icy cold spring water and then thoroughly wrung out. It is still shockingly cold and damp. With a practiced and efficient strength that allows for no argument, she begins to wrap you in this sheet. She wraps you tightly from your neck to your toes, pinning your arms to your sides. You are now completely immobilized, a helpless, human-sized, and very damp burrito. Then, she and another attendant begin to pile heavy, dry woolen blankets on top of you. 1, 2, 3, then 4, then 5. You are now entombed in a heavy, scratchy, and deeply claustrophobic cocoon. This was the signature and most celebrated treatment of the 19th century hydropathy movement, and it was based on a very specific theory. The hydropathists believed that the treatment progressed through 3 distinct stages. The first stage, which you are now entering, is the cooling stage. It is a period of intense and miserable cold. The wet sheet sucks the warmth from your body, and you begin to shiver violently. Your teeth chatter. Your entire nervous system is screaming in protest. It is, you reflect, one of the most profoundly uncomfortable experiences of your life. You begin to seriously question the life choices that have led you to this moment. But then, as your body fights back against the cold, a change occurs. You enter the second, or neutral, stage. Your own body heat begins to warm the water trapped in the sheet. The shivering subsides, replaced by a strange, clammy, and deeply weird sensation of being neither hot nor cold. You are simply damp. And finally, you enter the third and most important stage, the heating stage. Your body, trapped within this insulated, steamy cocoon, begins to overheat. You begin to sweat profusely. This is the goal of the treatment. The hydropathists believed that this induced artificial fever would draw out the morbid impurities and toxins from the body through the skin, a process they called a crisis. You are being gently cooked for your own good. You are left like this for a full hour. The only thing to do is lie there in the darkness and think. You think about your warm, dry bed. You think about the questionable life choices of the man who invented this treatment. You think about how your old problem of not being able to sleep has now been replaced by the much more immediate and pressing problem of being slowly and methodically steamed like a Christmas pudding. An attendant occasionally appears by your side to offer you a sip of cold water through a straw, as your arms are still pinned to your sides and useless. Medical historians still debate the actual physiological effects of the wet sheet pack. Was it just a miserable pseudoscientific ordeal? Or did the intense stimulation of the body's circulatory and nervous systems, and the profuse sweating, have any genuine, though perhaps not fully understood, therapeutic benefits for certain conditions? Finally, after what feels like a lifetime, the attendant returns and begins to unwrap you. You emerge from your cocoon red-faced, dripping with sweat, and completely and utterly exhausted. And just when you think the misery is over, just when you are dreaming of a warm towel and a hot cup of tea, the attendant cheerfully informs you that the wet sheet pack is always followed by a quick, invigorating plunge into a bath of cold water to tone the system. The philosophy of the water cure seems to be, if it's not actively and profoundly unpleasant, it's probably not working. You survive the cold bath. You are finally allowed to dry off and return to your room. You feel strange. You are not relaxed. You are not sleepy. You are exhausted, your body buzzing from the shock. But your mind, for the first time in a long time, is quiet. Perhaps the sheer, overwhelming physical misery of the last hour has finally bullied your anxious thoughts into submission. As you recover, you look at the day's schedule, and you see that your next water-based adventure, the cold sitz bath, is scheduled for after lunch. After the grand operatic drama of the morning's wet sheet pack, the afternoon's prescribed treatment sounds almost deceptively simple. The schedule pinned to your door says, 4 o'clock, sitz bath. You have no idea what a sitz bath is, but it sounds much less alarming than being wrapped up like a damp, claustrophobic mummy. You will soon learn, quite wrong. You are led to a different treatment room. In the center of this room is a strange and elegant-looking bathtub, often made of polished copper or tin. It is shaped almost like a high-backed armchair. It is designed so that you can sit comfortably upright in it, with your legs and feet resting outside the tub on the dry floor. It is a sitz bath, from the German word sitzen, meaning to sit. The attendant fills the bath with a few inches of water. It is not warm, soothing water. It is, once again, bracingly, shockingly ice-cold water, drawn directly from the establishment's deep, cold spring. You are instructed to sit in it, immersing only your hips and your lower abdomen, for a period of 15 minutes. This, the doctor has explained to you, is a highly scientific and targeted treatment. The theory of the hydropathists was that many nervous disorders, including insomnia, were caused by an excess of blood and nervous energy being concentrated in the brain. The cold sitz bath was designed to correct this imbalance. By applying intense cold directly to the abdomen and pelvis, the seat of the great sympathetic nervous system, they believed they could draw this excess energy and blood downwards, away from the overstimulated brain, thus calming the mind, soothing the nerves, and promoting a natural, healthy sleep. It is, in essence, a strategically targeted cold bath. The goal is to make one specific and very sensitive part of your body extremely cold, in the hope that it will make your brain less stressed. The logic is a bit of a stretch, but you are here to follow the doctor's orders, even if they seem to have been designed by a particularly inventive madman. You lower yourself into the water. The initial shock is breathtaking. A deep, penetrating chill radiates through your entire body. To add to the experience, the patient was often instructed, during the sitz bath, to vigorously rub their abdomen with a coarse, wet cloth. This friction was supposed to further stimulate the circulation and aid in the great flushing out of the body's impurities. So, you are sitting in a tub of ice water and you also have to rub your own stomach. It feels less like a medical treatment and more like a bizarre, self-inflicted punishment for the crime of not being sleepy enough. You are beginning to think that a simple, sleepless night in your own warm, dry bed was a luxury you did not fully appreciate. Medical historians often debate the psychological component of these heroic treatments. Did the sheer, profound unpleasantness of the water cure actually contribute to the cure? Was it a form of counter-irritation, where the immediate physical misery was so intense that it simply distracted the patient from their more chronic mental anxieties? Or was it that the patient, after paying a great deal of money and voluntarily enduring such discomfort, felt a powerful psychological need to believe they were getting better, a testament to the enduring power of the placebo effect? You endure your 15 minutes. You are then briskly toweled off and sent back to your room to rest. You spend a week at the hydropathic establishment. A week of this routine, the brisk pre-dawn walks, the bland diet of porridge and boiled vegetables, the daily misery of the wet sheet pack, and the focused agony of the cold sitz bath, and a strange thing happens. Seems to be working. You are, in fact, sleeping a little better. You fall asleep faster and you wake less often in the night. Is it the miraculous, stimulating effect of the cold water, rebalancing your nervous system as the doctor promised? Or is it the fact that you are away from the stresses of the city, eating a simple diet, getting lots of fresh air and exercise, and are so completely and utterly exhausted from the treatments by the end of the day that your body simply surrenders into unconsciousness as a form of self-preservation? You leave the establishment feeling rested, restored, and very, very clean. But as you return to the noise, the stress, and the gaslit nights of London, your old sleepless habits begin to creep back. The water cure, it seems, was only a temporary fix. Your quest for a lasting cure is not over. And you must now investigate the other great Victorian passion. Not the power of nature, but the power of the machine. The natural cure of cold water has provided only a temporary and rather miserable relief. Back in the bustling, modern, and noisy city of London, your old sleepless habits begin to return. Your mind turns to a different kind of solution, one that seems more in keeping with the spirit of your great and inventive age. You will turn from the power of nature to the power of the machine. The Victorian era was an age of gadgets, of cogs and gears, of steam and clockwork. There was a deep and abiding faith in the power of human ingenuity to solve any problem, no matter how complex. And this belief extended to the very personal and biological problem of sleep. If a machine can weave cloth or power a locomotive, then surely a machine can be invented to soothe the troubled mind and bring on a peaceful slumber. One afternoon, while reading a popular magazine, you see it. An advertisement for the latest marvel of sleep technology. It is Dr. Rudd's patent indestructible rocking bedstead. The advertisement shows an elegant illustration of a man sleeping peacefully in a handsome iron bed, which is gently rocking from side to side. For the nervous, the sleepless, and the invalid, the text reads, "A return to the gentle, natural slumber of the cradle." The logic is simple and deeply appealing. As an infant, you were rocked to sleep. Now, as an overstressed and anxious adult, you can purchase a large, expensive, and beautifully engineered clockwork-powered cradle for yourself. It is a technological solution to a biological problem. It is the most Victorian idea in the world. A few weeks later, after a significant expenditure, the bed is delivered and set up in your bedroom. It is a magnificent, if slightly intimidating, piece of machinery. It looks like a normal, respectable iron bedstead, but it is mounted on a heavy frame containing a large, powerful clockwork mechanism. To operate it, you use a large metal key to wind up a great coiled spring. That night, you perform the ritual with a sense of hopeful excitement. You wind the mechanism until it is tight. You get into bed and you pull a small lever. With a gentle whir and a soft clunk, the mechanism engages, and the entire bed begins to rock slowly, rhythmically, and steadily from side to side. The only sound is the quiet, rhythmic tick-tock creak of the clockwork gears turning in the base that he first. The gentle, swaying motion is incredibly pleasant and soothing. It is a genuine comfort. But after half an hour, you're not sure if the constant, unceasing motion is lulling you to sleep, or if it's just making you slightly seasick. And the quiet, repetitive creak of the machine, which at first was a soothing white noise, is beginning to sound less like a lullaby and more like a very large, very tired, and slightly annoyed hamster is running the whole contraption from a wheel hidden inside the frame. Various forms of therapeutic mechanical furniture, like this rocking bed, were patented and sold throughout the 19th century. They were part of a wider cultural fascination with using mechanical forces to treat medical and nervous conditions. Historians of technology debate whether these devices were considered serious medical apparatuses at the time, or if they were simply clever novelties, a form of quack engineering. Were they offering any real therapeutic benefit, or were they just a way for canny inventors to capitalize on the public's desperation for a cure and their endless fascination with new gadgets? The rocking bed is not a miracle cure. On some nights, the gentle motion does seem to help you drift off. On other nights, it is just another strange sensation in a room that is already full of too many thoughts. The novelty begins to wear off. You have tried to solve your problem with the ancient wisdom of herbs. You have tried to solve it with the cold, natural power of water. And you have tried to solve it with the modern, rational power of human ingenuity and clockwork. None of them has provided the final answer. Your quest for sleep must continue. And it is about to enter a new, even more modern and more mysterious scientific realm. You see another advertisement, this one for a device that does not rock you or soothe you with herbs. It promises to calm your overwrought nerves using the most miraculous, invisible, and powerful force of the new age: electricity. The clockwork rocking bed was an impressive piece of machinery, but in the fast-moving world of the 19th century, it was already becoming old technology. A new, invisible, silent, and almost magical force was capturing the public imagination, promising to light the world and power the future. That force was electricity, and where there is a new scientific marvel, a new set of medical cures is sure to follow. You see the advertisements in the same magazines that once praised the water cure. But these are for something far more modern. Recharge your nervous energy. One headline reads, "Banish sleeplessness with the soothing power of medical galvanism." Another proclaims, "This was the age of electrotherapy, a hugely popular and almost completely unregulated field of medicine." The theory was that nervous disorders like your own were caused by a depletion of your body's natural nervous battery. The solution, therefore, was to simply recharge it. It is a wonderfully simple and modern-sounding idea, the 19th century equivalent of plugging in your phone when the battery is at 1%. Intrigued, you purchase one of these devices. It arrives in a handsome, polished wooden box with shiny brass fittings. Inside, it looks very scientific. There is a small hand-crank generator or a galvanic battery, a set of dials and two long, insulated wires that end in polished metal handles. That night, you sit on the edge of your bed and consult the instructional manual. The manual has a diagram for every possible ailment. It seems this one little buzzing box can cure everything from a headache to a bald patch to a general sense of melancholy. It is a true miracle of modern science, or at least of modern marketing. For insomnia, the manual instructs you to hold the two metal handles for a period of 20 minutes before bed, with the dial set to a mild current. With a slight sense of trepidation, you begin the treatment. You turn the hand crank to generate the current, or you switch on the battery. You grip the metal handles, and you feel a strange new sensation. It is a faint, but distinct tingling or buzzing in your hands and up your arms. It is not painful, but it is deeply, profoundly weird. The machine itself emits a soft, low, steady humming sound. This was a genuine and widespread medical craze. Devices like the harness electric belt or the Davis and Kidder magneto-electric machine were sold by the thousands as cure-alls. While electrotherapy is a legitimate medical field today, used in devices like TENS machines for pain relief, the Victorian-era devices were largely pseudoscientific, their therapeutic claims wildly and fantastically exaggerated. You sit there in the quiet of your bedroom, holding the handles, feeling the strange tingle, and listening to the soft, monotonous hum of the machine. And you discover something surprising. The humming sound is actually very, very relaxing. It is a steady, predictable, and deeply soothing sound, a perfect form of white noise that helps to drown out the other distracting sounds of the city. The tingling sensation is also a powerful form of suggestion. You can feel the machine doing something, which makes you believe it must be working. Historians of science and medicine debate the reasons for this electrotherapy craze. Was it driven by a genuine, if misplaced, scientific optimism about the immense potential of this newly discovered force? Or was it primarily the work of clever quacks and entrepreneurs who used impressive-looking scientific apparatus to sell what were essentially useless devices to a gullible public that was desperate for new, modern-sounding cures? After the prescribed 20 minutes, you turn off the machine. Do you feel cured? No, but you do feel a little calmer. The gentle hum is quite pleasant. You suspect that if they just sold a box that made the humming sound without all the slightly alarming electrical bits, it would be just as effective and significantly less likely to give you a mild shock if you happen to use it incorrectly. The mechanical and electrical cures have proven to be interesting novelties, but they have not solved your fundamental problem. You are still tired. Your desperation, which had been temporarily eased by the hope of these modern inventions, now returns. You have tried the gentle advice of your doctor. You have tried the ancient wisdom of herbs. You have tried the bracing misery of the water cure. You have tried the wonders of the machine age. And still you lie awake at night. There is one last place to turn. A place that promises not a gentle rocking or a soothing hum, but a true, deep, and chemically guaranteed oblivion. A place that deals in potions and powders, in tinctures and tonics. It is time to visit the chemist's shop. You have reached the end of the road of gentle, mechanical, and pseudoscientific cures. Your desperation has led you here, to the final and most powerful source of relief available to a respectable Victorian. You push open the door to the local chemist's shop, a small bell tinkling softly above your head, announcing your arrival. Imagine you are standing inside. It is a beautiful and almost magical place. The air is filled with a complex medicinal scent, a mixture of sharp chemicals, dried herbs, and sweet alcoholic tinctures. The walls are lined from the polished wooden floor to the high ceiling with shelves, and these shelves are packed with hundreds of glass bottles, filled with powders and liquids of every conceivable color. They glow like jewels in the soft, hazy light of the gas lamps. This is the great unregulated marketplace of hope. The chemist, a serious, professional-looking man in a starched collar and a crisp apron, is seen not just as a shopkeeper, but as a man of science, a purveyor of the latest modern miracles. Whatever your ailment, a persistent cough, a bad back, a case of the vapors, or your own relentless sleeplessness, there was a beautifully designed bottle with a catchy name on his shelves that promised a swift, effective, and complete cure. This was the great age of the patent medicine. Before modern pharmaceutical regulations, before prescriptions and clinical trials, anyone could mix up a concoction, give it an impressive-sounding name, make extravagant claims about its curative powers, and sell it directly to the public. The industry was massive. Products with names like Dr. Kilmer's Swamp Root, Ayer's Cherry Pectoral, and Lydia Pinkham's Vegetable Compound were some of the first goods to be nationally advertised, their creators becoming incredibly wealthy. You approach the counter. You quietly explain your problem to the chemist. You tell him of your nervous prostration, your inability to find a restful night's sleep. He nods with a deep, professional sympathy. He has heard this story many, many times. It is one of the most common complaints of the modern age. He turns to his glowing wall of bottles. Ah yes, he might say. For an overwrought nervous system, I have just the thing. He selects a small dark-colored bottle with a beautiful ornate paper label. He praises its virtues. It is a soothing syrup, he explains, a nervous cordial, a balsam for the troubled mind. It is made from a secret time-tested formula of gentle natural ingredients, and it is guaranteed to provide a deep, refreshing, and entirely natural sleep. The marketing for these products was incredibly sophisticated. The advertisements in the newspapers were filled with sentimental images of peacefully sleeping babies and glowing, emotional testimonials from cured customers. Before taking Dr. Goodman's Nervine tonic, a testimonial might read, "My nights were a torment of anxiety. Now I sleep the sleep of the innocent." Who wouldn't want to buy a bottle of bottled innocence? Historians still debate the role of the individual chemist in this system. Were they cynical charlatans, knowingly selling dangerous and addictive potions to a desperate and unsuspecting public? Or were many of them, like the doctors of the era, genuine believers in their own products, acting with good intentions but within a medical framework that did not yet understand the true nature of the powerful ingredients they were dispensing? You are convinced. The promise of a guaranteed, peaceful, and natural sleep is too powerful to resist after your long and fruitless journey through the worlds of wet sheets and rocking beds. You purchase the bottle. You leave the shop, clutching your small, dark glass bottle. It feels heavy in your hand, heavy with promise. After weeks of trying boring books and uncomfortable contraptions, the idea of a simple, easy, and scientifically modern chemical solution is incredibly seductive. You feel a sense of hope you haven't felt in a long, long time. That night, you are in your bedroom. It is late. Your mind is beginning its usual anxious race. But tonight, you have a new weapon. You uncork the bottle and pour a single treacly spoonful of the dark, sweet-smelling syrup. It is time to try the chemist's promised cure. Your bottle of soothing syrup has become your nightly ritual, your trusted friend. But what is the secret to its gentle, sleep-inducing magic? The label on the bottle is beautiful, full of elegant script and promises of natural ingredients. But it does not tell you the full story. The secret active ingredient in your cure, and in countless others like it, was the most famous, most widely used, and most dangerous of all Victorian medicines. It was laudanum. Laudanum is a simple concoction. It is a tincture of opium, which means raw opium dissolved in alcohol. The result is a potent, reddish-brown, and bitterly sweet liquid. In your era, it was a universal remedy, a true cure-all. It was cheaper than a bottle of gin, and it was available without any need for a doctor's prescription from any chemist, grocer, or even a local corner shop. People of all classes, from the poorest factory worker in a Manchester slum to the wealthiest duchess in a London palace, used laudanum. They used it to treat physical pain, a toothache, a headache, the chronic pain of arthritis. They used it to quiet a persistent cough. They used it to treat the agonies of dysentery and cholera. And of course, they used it for ailments of the mind, for anxiety, for melancholy, and for sleeplessness. It was the Victorian equivalent of an everything pill. Got a bad back? Laudanum. Feeling a bit sad and overwhelmed by the pace of modern life? A nice, warm, dreamy glass of laudanum. It was the solution to every problem. And its popularity was based on a simple fact: it worked. In an age with few other effective painkillers, laudanum was a genuine miracle. And for the anxious and the sleepless, it provided a reliable and blissful escape. The sleep it provided was not just a simple unconsciousness. It was a heavy, profound, and often dream-filled state, a true chemical oblivion that silenced the racing mind. Many of the great artists and writers of the age were regular users, and sometimes tragic addicts. The poet Samuel Taylor Coleridge famously wrote his strange and beautiful poem Kubla Khan after waking from an opium-induced dream. The writer Thomas de Quincey documented his own descent into addiction in his famous book, Confessions of an English Opium Eater. The line between medical treatment and artistic inspiration was, for many, a very blurry and dangerous one. Historians debate the social perception of this widespread opiate use. Was it seen as a shameful, degenerate addiction as we would view it today? Or was it, for much of the 19th century, seen as a perfectly normal and respectable habit, a common and necessary remedy for the aches, pains, and anxieties of everyday life? The evidence suggests that for a long time, the true, powerfully addictive nature of the drug was not well understood by the general public or even by many doctors, but the dark side of this universal cure was ever present. The withdrawal symptoms were agonizing. Accidental overdoses, especially of children given too much of a soothing syrup, were tragically common, and the long-term use of the drug could ruin a person's health and their life. You, in your bedroom, begin to realize the true nature of your miracle cure. The pleasant, drowsy warmth it provides, the quiet it brings to your mind. It is the effect of a powerful narcotic. The bottle on your bedside table now looks a little different to you. It is no longer just a friendly helper in your quest for rest. It is a powerful master. The sleep it gives you is not a natural restorative sleep, but a heavy chemical sleep. And you are beginning to realize, with a dawning sense of unease, that the cure might be far more dangerous than the disease. But laudanum, for all its power, was beginning to seem a little old-fashioned. A new, even more modern and more scientific chemical was becoming popular. A substance that promised a swift and dreamless slumber with just a few simple breaths. The opium-based syrups and cordials were powerful, but they felt ancient, a part of an older herbal tradition. For the truly modern Victorian, a person who believed in the clean, rational, and miraculous power of the laboratory, an even more scientific-sounding solution was becoming available. Its name was chloroform. If laudanum was the dark, romantic, and slightly disreputable secret of the age, chloroform was its bright, clean, and celebrated scientific marvel. It had been discovered just a few decades earlier and was hailed as one of the great medical breakthroughs of the century for its power as an anesthetic during surgery. And crucially, it had the ultimate seal of approval. In 1853, Queen Victoria herself had been administered chloroform to ease the pain of childbirth during the birth of her son, Prince Leopold. This royal endorsement made the substance not just medically acceptable, but respectable and highly fashionable. And so, it quickly found its way from the operating theater into the domestic medicine cabinet. Chemists began to sell small bottles of purified chloroform directly to the public, often marketed as a remedy for asthma, coughs, and of course for sleeplessness. The method was simple, modern, and seemed so clean. You did not have to swallow a thick, bitter, opium-laced syrup. You were simply instructed to pour a few drops of the clear, sweet-smelling liquid onto a handkerchief, hold it to your nose, and gently inhale. The fumes would produce a state of lightheadedness, then a gentle drowsiness, and then, if all went according to plan, a deep and profoundly dreamless sleep. The instructions were, of course, very clear that one should only use a few drops. The problem, which the advertisements tended to downplay, was that the line between a few drops that produces a gentle slumber and a few too many drops that produces a permanent non-waking slumber was an incredibly, terrifyingly thin one. It was a cure that required a very steady hand and a good deal of luck. Chloroform is an extremely powerful anesthetic, and it is very easy to accidentally overdose. The difference between the dose that causes unconsciousness and the dose that causes fatal respiratory arrest is not very large. And even with non-fatal doses, long-term use could cause serious damage to the liver and the kidneys. In the early days of its discovery, before these dangers were fully understood, chloroform even became a brief and bizarre recreational fad. Chloroform parties were held in some adventurous upper-class circles, where guests would gather in a drawing room to take turns inhaling the substance and enjoying the giddy, intoxicating effects as they passed out. It's a very Victorian idea of a good time. What shall we do for entertainment tonight, darling? Shall we play a game of cards? Or shall we all sit in a circle and inhale a powerful surgical anesthetic until we lose consciousness? It was a different era of recreational activity. Historians debate how widespread the domestic use of chloroform for insomnia truly was. Was it a common, over-the-counter remedy that many people kept in their bedside table? Or was it a more niche and often more illicit substance used by a smaller number of people who were aware of its risks but were desperate for its powerful knockout effect? Imagine you are back in the chemist's shop looking at the shelves. You see your familiar bottle of soothing syrup with its promise of a gentle, dreamy rest. And next to it, you see the small, clear bottle of chloroform with its promise of a swift, scientific, and absolute oblivion. And in this moment, you have a moment of profound and chilling clarity. You have looked into the alluring but dangerous world of laudanum, and now you are looking at an even more powerful and dangerous chemical. You came to the chemist seeking a cure for your sleeplessness, but you now realize that you have only found a collection of more dangerous problems. The modern scientific solutions are beginning to seem far more frightening than the simple, familiar misery of a sleepless night. The thought of becoming dependent on these powerful substances, or of the harm they could do to your body, is suddenly more terrifying than your racing thoughts. You realize that your desperate quest for a quick and easy cure has led you down a dark and dangerous path that it is time to turn back. You turn away from the chemist's counter, leaving the allure of chloroform and the false promise of laudanum behind. You have made a decision. But as you walk out of the shop and back into the bustling London street, you see the world with new and more perceptive eyes. You are now acutely and sadly aware of the quiet, hidden epidemic that is all around you. The Victorian era's relationship with opium was a deep, complex, and tragic one. Opiate addiction was one of the great, unacknowledged public health crises of the age. But it was not an epidemic of the dark, criminal underworld. It was a quiet, respectable, and profoundly domestic tragedy. The most common addict was not a shadowy figure in an opium den. It was a middle-class housewife. In an age when women's health was poorly understood, and their emotional lives were often dismissed as hysteria, laudanum was the go-to prescription for a vast range of female complaints. For anxiety, for depression, for menstrual pain, for the exhaustion of running a large household, the answer from the family doctor was often a comforting dose of laudanum. It was a quiet chemical crutch that helped millions of women get through their difficult, constrained lives. This was a world in which addiction as a medical concept was not yet truly understood. It was most often seen not as a physiological dependency, but as a moral failing, a weakness of character, or a sign of a dissolute nature. This added a deep layer of shame and secrecy to the problem. People did not admit they were addicted to their nightly soothing syrup. They simply believed they had a delicate constitution that required a regular tonic. It is a quiet, secret suffering. It does not happen in a back alley. It happens in the respectable drawing room, in the quiet of a lady's bedroom. It is the secret of the housewife who cannot get through her afternoon without her nervine tonic, or the celebrated writer who cannot face the blank page without a preparatory dose of laudanum. And the drug was everywhere, in 100 different forms. There were opium pills, opium-laced lozenges and sweets for treating coughs, and even medicated wines and beers that were popular with men and women alike. You could get your daily dose of opiates in a huge variety of forms. It was the 19th century equivalent of everything being available in a pumpkin spice flavor in the autumn. No matter what your preference, there was an opium-based product for you. Social historians still debate the true scale of this addiction crisis. Because the substances were legal, cheap, and often hidden within the secret formulas of patent medicines, it is incredibly difficult to find accurate statistics. But estimates based on the massive quantities of raw opium being imported into Britain from its colonies in India and Turkey, and on the staggering sales figures of the most popular patent medicines, suggests that the number of regular dependent users was in the hundreds of thousands, if not millions, in Britain alone. Your decision to step away from these chemical cures is a decision to break a cycle that has trapped so many of your contemporaries. You see the advertisements in the newspapers now not as promises, but as traps. You understand the hidden, tragic truth behind the sentimental images of sleeping babies and placid, smiling mothers. Towards the end of the century, the medical establishment would begin to wake up to the full scale of the danger. Doctors would begin to sound the alarm about the perils of opiate addiction. And in a final, tragic irony, new, supposedly non-addictive miracle drugs would be introduced to cure people of their morphine dependency. The most famous of these, a new and powerful opiate derivative, was introduced by the Bayer Company of Germany in the 1890s. It was marketed as a safe, non-addictive cough suppressant and a cure for morphine addiction. Its brand name was heroin. The search for a perfect cure without any side effects is a long and often difficult one. You have looked down the dark, seductive path of chemical cures, and you have chosen to turn back. The peace they offer is a borrowed peace, and the price is too high. You realize with a quiet clarity that the true cure for your sleeplessness will not be found in a bottle. It must be found within yourself. It is time to return to the simple, sensible wisdom from the very beginning, but to approach it this time not as a chore, but as a genuine act of self-care. You turn away from the chemist's shop, leaving the seductive promises of opium and chloroform behind on the glowing glass shelves. Your quest for a miracle cure is over. You have tried the ancient wisdom of herbs, the bracing shock of the water cure, the whirring ingenuity of machines, and the chemical oblivion of patent medicines. You are now left with nothing but yourself, and with the simple, gentle, and profoundly boring advice your family doctor gave you all those weeks ago. And you decide to try it one last time, but differently. You will approach it not with the desperation of a patient seeking a cure, but with the quiet patience of a student learning a new skill, the skill of rest. That evening, you begin your new gentle ritual. You eat a light, simple, and warm supper, and you eat it slowly, mindfully several hours before you intend to go to bed. Afterwards, you do not read the sensational newspaper reports or engage in a heated political debate. Instead, you prepare a warm bath, perhaps with a few drops of the lavender oil you used before. You soak in the tub not as a treatment, but simply for the pleasure of the warmth and the quiet. The goal is not to shock your system into submission, but to gently coax it into a state of calm. After your bath, you get into your nightclothes and you sit in a comfortable armchair with the most boring book you own. But this time, your goal is not to use the book as a blunt instrument to beat your brain into unconsciousness. Your goal is simply to quiet the noise of the day, to replace the anxious, looping thoughts with the calm, ordered, and blessedly uninteresting words on the page. It turns out your old, bearded family doctor was right all along. A quiet mind, a calm body, and a profoundly dull book are, in fact, the most powerful and sustainable sleep aids in the world. It is a cure that is far less dramatic than being wrapped in a cold, wet sheet, but it is significantly more pleasant. The core principles of the most advanced modern therapy for insomnia, known as CBTI, are remarkably similar to this sensible Victorian advice. It is a therapy based on creating a relaxing bedtime routine, managing anxious thoughts, and reassociating the bedroom with a state of calm. The Victorians did not have the scientific terminology, but their intuitive common-sense wisdom was, in this case, exactly right. The greatest change is in your own mind. You lie in bed. The anxious thoughts inevitably begin to arrive. But now you do not fight them. You do not become frustrated. You practice a technique you read about in a ladies' magazine. When a worry enters your mind, you are to calmly acknowledge it, and then mentally place it in a box on a high shelf, to be dealt with in the morning. Thank you for your input, brain, you say to yourself. I am placing the thought about that awkward conversation at tea on the anxieties for tomorrow's shelf. Good night. It is a very polite way to tell your own mind to be quiet. And it begins to work. Not every night. Not perfectly. But But slowly, gradually, night by night, your body and your mind begin to relearn the ancient, forgotten art of letting go. You find that the space between lying down and falling asleep, which had been a battlefield of anxiety, is becoming a quiet, neutral, and sometimes even pleasant space. There is no miracle. There is only the quiet, gentle magic of routine, patience, and self-compassion. The cure you have discovered was not in an exotic herb, a strange machine, or a powerful potion. It was in the simple, boring wisdom that was there all along. You just had to be tired enough and scared enough of all the strange and dangerous cures to finally be ready to listen to it. You have learned how to prepare your mind and your body for rest. There is just one final piece of the puzzle. You must also prepare your environment. You must create a true sanctuary for sleep, a space protected from the two great enemies of rest in your modern, Victorian world, light and noise. You have learned to quiet your mind and soothe your body. Now, for the final piece of the puzzle, you turn your attention to your bedroom itself. You will transform it from a simple place where you happen to sleep into a true sanctuary, an environment engineered for the sole purpose of rest. You begin with the problem of light. The great gas lamps in the street outside, which your city celebrates as a triumph of modern progress over the darkness, have become your enemy. Their constant, hissing glow creates a perpetual twilight, a pale yellowish haze that seeps through the gaps in your heavy curtains and reminds your body that the world outside is still awake, so you begin a quiet war against the light. You invest in new, even heavier curtains, perhaps with a thick, dark lining sewn inside. You go around the room, finding every little crack and seam around the window frame where the gaslight can invade, and you block them with strips of dark cloth. The goal is to make your room as dark as a country night in the dead of winter, a deep and absolute darkness that was the natural environment for human sleep for all of history until your generation. The link between light and the disruption of sleep is, of course, a major topic of modern scientific research. But this Victorian advice to sleep in a completely darkened room was a powerful, intuitive understanding of the very same principle. They knew, simply through experience, that a darker room led to a deeper, more restorative sleep. It is a radical idea for a Victorian. Your age is so proud of its ability to conquer the night with brilliant light. To deliberately block out this symbol of progress, to choose the ancient, primitive darkness instead, is a quiet act of rebellion against the non-stop energy of your own century. Next, you turn to the problem of noise. The Victorian city is never truly silent. Even in the dead of night, there is the distant, lonely whistle of a steam train, the sudden, sharp clatter of a horse and cart moving late at night, and the early morning cries of the milkman and the baker beginning their rounds. To combat this, you muffle your room. A thick, new carpet is laid on the floor to absorb sound from the rooms below. You might even hang a heavy, decorative tapestry on the wall that adjoins your neighbor's. You ensure your door closes snugly in its frame. The only time the city truly fell silent was during one of the infamous pea soupers, the thick, yellow-black London fogs, caused by a toxic mixture of river mist and immense coal smoke pollution. These fogs, while unhealthy to breathe, had a strange and deeply muffling effect, absorbing all sound and wrapping the city in an eerie, almost supernatural quiet. It's a strange trade-off. On a clear night, the city is noisy. On a foggy night, it is quiet, but the air is also a poisonous yellow soup. Finding the perfect, quiet, and also healthy night's sleep is a real challenge. Historians who study the soundscape of the past debate the true nature of the Victorian city at night. Was it a constant, low-level rumble that one could get used to? Or was it, in fact, a world of deep quiet, punctuated by sudden, sharp, and jarring noises, which are often even more disruptive to sleep than a steady hum? Finally, your sanctuary is complete. You have created a room that is dark, quiet, cool, and smells gently of lavender and hops. You have, in essence, engineered a time machine. Your bedroom is now a small, protected pocket of the pre-industrial world, a quiet, dark, and peaceful cave, hidden away in the very heart of the bright, noisy, and anxious 19th century. You have addressed your diet. You have learned to calm your mind. You have tended to your anxieties. And you have perfected your environment. You have done everything that the wisest doctors of your age have recommended. You have finally learned the timeless art of preparing for rest. You lie down in your new sanctuary. The room is dark. It is cool. It is quiet. The air smells gently of lavender and hops. You have done everything you can. And as you lie there in the peaceful darkness, you reflect on your long, strange, and exhausting journey in search of a simple night's rest. You began in a state of anxious desperation, a product of your fast-paced, noisy, and brilliantly lit modern age. You sought a cure from the sensible advice of your doctor, from the ancient wisdom of herbs, from the bracing, miserable shock of the water cure, from the creaking ingenuity of machines, and from the dark, alluring promise of the chemist's bottle. And now, you have come full circle. You have ended up back where you started, with the simple, gentle wisdom of a quiet mind, a calm body, and a peaceful room. The journey was not about finding a magical cure that existed somewhere out in the world. It was about finding the quiet wisdom that already existed within yourself. The Victorian struggle with sleeplessness was a problem born of their own incredible success. The same industrial energy that built their great empire also filled their cities with noise and smoke. The same gaslight that illuminated their streets also stole the natural darkness of the night. And the same intellectual ferment that led to their great scientific discoveries also filled their minds with new and complex anxieties. And in this, perhaps, the Victorian insomniac is not so different from us. The technology changes, but the struggle is a timeless one. The person kept awake by the clatter of a carriage on the cobblestones and the hiss of a gas lamp is the not-so-distant ancestor of the person kept awake today by the blue light of a phone and the endless, scrolling anxieties of the internet. The quest for rest, for a moment of true peace in a world that is always demanding our attention, is a universal and deeply human one. You think of all the strange advice you've encountered. You remember reading one last, peculiar tip in a journal, that one should always sleep with their head pointing to the north, to align oneself with the great, calming magnetic field of the earth itself. Perhaps that is the answer. Or perhaps you think as a gentle drowsiness finally begins to soften the edges of your thoughts, the answer is simpler. There is no magic cure. There is no special potion or clever machine. The solution you have finally learned is not a thing you can buy. It is a practice. A gentle, patient, and quiet practice of preparing the mind, the body, and the environment for the simple, natural, and beautiful surrender that is sleep. And with that final quiet realization, you feel a gentle letting go. A final, peaceful exhale. And our story of the long Victorian night comes to its end. The memory of the doctor's gentle advice, the scent of the lavender and hops, the absurd feeling of the wet sheet pack, and the alluring glow of the chemist's shop, all of these can now begin to fade, like the details of a half-remembered dream. The clatter of the city, the hiss of the gaslight, the hum of the strange machines have all fallen silent. There is only the deep, welcoming quiet of your own dark, peaceful room. The long quest is over. You have found what you were looking for, and now you can rest.